Ty Simpson said no to Miami. He said no to Tennessee and to Ole Miss. The former Alabama quarterback told his truth as to why he opted for the NFL draft, but there's one thing he said that I believe to be false.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
5 days now away from the national championship game, Miami Hurricanes and Indiana Hoosiers. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost on every game day. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about the CFP National Championship game and why Miami is being slept on. Because if you listen to not all, but most of the national analysts have Indiana by 1 million. Now, an exception to that, a maverick in the world of sports journalism, is Josh Pate from On3 and ESPN. Josh Pate has taken a leap of faith on the Hurricanes. We'll talk about that. And, before we talk about this Monday night, I know everyone is curious as to what Miami is going to do at the quarterback position for next year. I think it's becoming increasingly likely, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but it's becoming increasingly likely that you're going to have a competition within the guys you organically recruited and the guys who are on the roster right now to find your starting quarterback for next year. It's not as sexy as what you've done the last couple of years. You go out and get Cam Ward, sets the world on fire, becomes the #1 overall pick. You went out and got Carson Beck. He's about to play for a national championship in 5 days' time, right? So, listen, it's a little scary after what Miami's done the last couple of years, but it might this year, or for next year, I should say, come down to possibly Emory Williams versus Judd Anderson versus Luke Nickel versus Darion Coleman, and that's, assuming neither of the older guys leave, and I think if Miami doesn't add somebody, there's a good chance that they all stay. Could become a 4-man competition. Now, the reason why Miami is at this point now is, if you haven't heard, so we hadn't covered it yet on an episode of Locked On Canes, but it happened yesterday afternoon. Ty Simpson, former Alabama quarterback, he's finalized his plans to declare for the NFL draft. He's signing his paperwork. There's no turning back now, okay? And when I'll get to what I think Simpson said that to me is categorically false. I'm not talking about the facts of the situation, though. So Simpson, ultimately, and the statement that he made, Alabama fans are rightfully so loving it, right? Because he comes off as incredibly loyal to the Crimson Tide. They're eating it all, as they should, right? He said all the right things about not wanting to play for another school, doesn't want to damage his Alabama legacy. And so as for what Simpson said has been happening for the last couple of weeks, this is really interesting because he spilled all the tea. Like, he didn't hold back any details, apparently. So Simpson, this according to On3 Sports, said that Miami and Tennessee, I think this was early on in the portal process, Miami and Tennessee both said that they would pay him $4 million. Ole Miss also jumped in at around the $4 million mark. Remember, they're not letting Trinidad Chambliss play another year of college. So Ole Miss jumped in $4 million, right? Tennessee said it could possibly go as high as $5 million. And then eventually Miami ran up the tab to around $6.5 million. Here's a quote from Simpson. He said, quote, Miami was kind of like, all right, we're moving on. And then they lost out on Sam Levitt, and then they came back with that big number of what he claims was $6.5 million. And then Ole Miss called again and said that they could match it. Now, again, Simpson decides to follow through with the NFL draft. Now, in terms of his decision, I'm not shocked at him making this decision because the difference between Ty Simpson right now versus Carson Beck last year and Cam Ward 2 years ago is the feedback that Ty Simpson is getting, and the feedback I've been getting when I talk to draft people. When I said a week or two ago I didn't think he was going to be a first-round pick, that was before I had done my research. I was wrong. Everybody is saying that Ty Simpson is a mid to late first-round pick and that he's not going to have to sit until day 2. So knowing that, it makes sense. And I get it. There are financial reasons why staying in college for another year would be good for your bank account, because if you're getting $5 million or $6.5 million, that's like double what you would make as a rookie in the National Football League. So yeah, there are financial incentives to taking an offer like that, but when you're projected to be a first-round pick, your stock can only go so far in the upward direction. It can go a lot farther in the other direction. And by getting into the league a year earlier, you start the clock on your second contract. So, even though it may not be as financially valuable next year to go to the NFL, I think Simpson is making a reasonable business decision and a reasonable investment on himself to come back to college for another, or to go to the NFL and not come back to college for another year. But the other part of what Simpson said that I think is short-sighted, and I think it's categorically false. He said, if he had come back to play another year in college, not at Alabama, he said, everybody would just remember me as the guy who took all this money and went to Miami or Tennessee for his last year. Now, I can't speak for Tennessee, but I can confidently speak for Miami. To assume that people would just look at you as the guy that took all the money, I think it's unfair and it's untrue. Cam Ward 2 years ago, last season, 2024 season, Cam Ward raised his stock. I mean, you literally can't get higher than where Cam Ward put his stock into the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And Cam Ward became the most talked about player in college football that year. There's documentaries made about his amazing story. He had a viral touchdown celebration that people are still doing in college and in the pros to this day. Does anybody look back at Cam Ward's year at Miami and say, that's the guy that took all the money? Now, I think the most powerful example of that not being the case is you look at the Fiesta Bowl that Miami just won. And, Ward was a Tennessee Titan, just finished his rookie year there. His season had just finished, and Cam Ward is on the sideline for that game. Cam Ward, who was at Miami for just one season, right? If you try to characterize him as a mercenary or something, you see Cam Ward, who is at Miami for one, offensively, and for him, a magical one season at Miami. He's on the sidelines hobnobbing with the likes of Ray Lewis, Edgerrin James, Michael Irvin, Greg Olson. Cam Ward did not look or feel out of place with any of those Miami legends. He is as much a Cane as Ray Lewis. He is as much a Miami Hurricane as Michael Irvin. Nobody would take that away from him. So this idea that if you come for 1 year, you're a mercenary or you're just the guy that took all the money, Cam Ward just showed you that is categorically false. Carson Beck this season, Carson Beck is 60 minutes away from potentially winning a national championship. Now, technically, he's got 2 national championship rings when he was Stetson Bennett's backup as a young player at Georgia. But I'll tell you, this one as the starting quarterback, coming off the surgery, coming off all the adversity, this run is going to mean a lot more to Carson than the runs that he had at UGA. My guy Gabby Arudi at InsideTheU.com made that point that I don't think when Carson Beck scored that game-winning touchdown that he or anyone was thinking, that's the guy that took the money, and he was 1,000% right when he made that point. I thought it was an unfair characterization by Ty Simpson. Now, again, I think he's telling his truth. Maybe he would feel that way. Maybe Alabama fans would feel that way. But I don't think to put Miami in that box with the success that Miami's had at the quarterback position these past 2 seasons with transfer guys who improved their stock and improved their fortune as Miami Hurricanes, I think it's wrong to characterize it that way, that if he had decided to come to Miami, that he would just be the guy who took the money. I had to get that off my chest. And I know you folks have a ton of questions about the future of the quarterback position, and you've got questions about the matchups against Indiana. We're going to break it all down on this episode. I'll have questions from the Everydayer Club All Access members. We'll talk about Josh Pate being a maverick and picking the Miami Hurricanes. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we're proudly brought to you by FanDuel. We got one more game left in these college football playoffs. Miami is an 8.5-point underdog against Indiana, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every game day. Because right now, for this college football playoff final, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. If you're taking a shot on the underdog, you feel that upset coming, take that shot. Or for the Indiana fans listening to this, you want to ride with the favorite. You think they control the matchup, or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think decide the game. If you feel like Carson Beck, Malachi Toney, Mark Fletcher, Keontae Scott are going to have an impact, you can build these parlays around them, and then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts on every game day. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And if you're an everydayer, make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. LockedOnCanes.supercast.com. If you want to join the Everydayer Club, the all-access tier, you get an exclusive audio episode every day called the Canes Colada. You get an exclusive newsletter, one-on-one texting access with me, LockedOnCanes.supercast.com. So, you know, I've been listening to some of the national shows, the prediction shows, and, you know, most folks are making the safe pick of the Indiana Hoosiers, right? They've got a Heisman Trophy quarterback who's returning home, which is an incredible story. Fernando Mendoza, the Miami native, Miami Columbus grad, coming back to his hometown as potentially the conquering hero. You've got a team that's been steamrolling opponents. I mean, winning games by 30-plus points in the college football playoff. They've had this season one of the biggest average margins of victory in college football history. Indiana is the safe pick, right? One media member, and maybe the only notable one so far. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but Josh Pate from On3 Sports and ESPN came out and picked Miami, and his feeling that he expressed was he thinks Miami is going to play their best football, their best game of the season in this championship game, and that Miami's best level of play would be enough to beat Indiana, right? He cites the line of scrimmage advantage. You know, for as good and solid as Indiana has been at the line of scrimmage, they protected their quarterback. They're second in the nation in rushing defense. They only give up 75 yards per game. That Miami's big people will be able to, more than half the time, push around Indiana's biggest people. And we know Miami has a size advantage, right? Miami's offensive line averages around 332 pounds. Indiana's D-line averages 278 pounds. At what point does physics come into play? And maybe the most unexpected thing from Pate was that he trusts Carson Beck to make the good decisions and avoid the critical mistakes, right? And you probably should trust Beck because for the past 7 games, including this 3-0 run so far in the college football playoff, Beck has been making good decisions and avoiding the mistakes. But I know a lot of folks out there still try to put those turnover-prone labels and those concerns about Carson Beck. But, you know, ultimately, Miami absolutely has a chance to win this football game. I think win or lose, and I'm going to pick Miami to win. But I think win or lose, it's going to be close. It's going to be a final possession type of game. You know, Miami has not been blown out in years. You know, they've only suffered, 5 losses, including a bowl game in their past 2 seasons. Miami's never been blown out. It's been one possession in all of them, despite how good Indiana is. I don't believe this game will be an exception to that. I think with the way Miami controls the line of scrimmage and can control the pace of play, win or lose, and I think Miami will win, but win or lose, I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be one possession. So I view the 8.5-point spread to be a bit of a slap in the face and a bit disrespectful to Miami. And I want to answer some questions here from the Locked On Canes insiders and the Everydayer Club members. We get one from Steve in Port Orange, who says, talent for talent, I think Miami is the better team, but we know it all comes down to the quarterback. Who is the better quarterback, Fernando Mendoza or Carson Beck? Steve, I love you, but I don't think you're right about your characterization. I don't think it comes down to which quarterback is better. I strongly believe it comes down to which quarterback is more affected by the opposing defense. Fernando Mendoza, obviously, statistically and by most measures, has had the better season than Carson Beck. But that doesn't mean he's going to lead his team to a championship. Both of these quarterbacks, Mendoza and Beck, have shown this year that if you put the ball in their hands, needing a game-winning drive, they can come through. Beck just showed you that less than a week ago. Carson Beck can absolutely play well enough to win this game. But can Francis Mauigoa, Markel Bell and company, can they keep him protected? Can they do a better job protecting Carson Beck than Indiana's offensive line does protecting Mendoza? Can Miami's offensive line provide enough of a push for Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown to break through and have a good day running the football? And so, okay, I think it's closer than a lot of people think. But, yeah, Fernando Mendoza is considered to be the better quarterback right now. But that doesn't automatically mean he's going to have a better game than Carson Beck. I mean, they're not literally on the field at the same time. I think which quarterback is more or less affected by the opposition is going to decide this game. And I want to play a clip for you. I had the honor of co-hosting the Joe Rose Show this morning on 104.3 WQAM in Miami, which is that show is an institution for South Florida sports fans. We had interviewing today, ironically enough, a colleague of mine from the Locked On Network, Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. Now, Krabs covers the Dolphins. He's not a Miami fan, like not a Hurricane fan, just throwing that out there. So this is an objective take from Kyle Krabs. But on that interview this morning on WQAM, Kyle, and I'll play the clip for you, he also hosts NFL scouting. Like he's very much into college football and draft picks. He's a big part of the Locked On NFL draft coverage. Kyle Krabs made the case for why Miami absolutely has a chance to win this football game, and it starts exactly where I said it would, in the trenches.
I think the matchups are really intriguing because I think there's some things that the Canes have on their roster that weigh in their favor. When you consider Mesidor and Bain as the pass rushers and how routinely, especially at the college level, you see really successful quarterbacks, but if their offensive line can't handle the rush, the way that totally derails, like the Michigan-Washington national championship game from a few years ago where Michigan had Aiden Hutchinson and just Michael Penix was it was the high-flying offense, but they never really found the rhythm. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the blueprint for the Canes in this game. And then on the other side of the ball, what Miami has with the mass on the offensive line and the physicality and the way to run the ball, plus they're at home. Like, I would not be surprised if the Canes end up pulling this thing off. I think it's very easy to look at how well that offense is humming. I know Kurt Cignetti's done an amazing job with the transfer portal and bringing guys in, and they have a roster full of guys that are more mature than a lot of other college teams. But I think Miami's explosiveness and power on the trenches on both sides of the ball has a chance to offset that. I think it's going to be a really good game.
I love the example he brought up of Michigan against Washington because, Michael Penix went into that game as the hottest thing since sliced bread. I mean, the amazing year that he had at the helm and had no rhythm, did not have time, was not able to establish and play the game that he played all throughout the season. Miami needs to do that to Mendoza. And, again, I've been talking about this all week, like a statistic that goes in Miami's favor for a vaunted pass rush that comes from Rueben, Bain, and Akeem Mesidor and Marquise Lightfoot, and from the interior, from Ahmad Moten Sr., who's going to be healthy enough to play in this game, as will be Mesidor, we might mention, and from Justin Scott, who've given opposing quarterbacks such a tough time. Mendoza this year has held on to the football for an average of 3.03 seconds. I mean, anyone who's held on to the ball for more than 2.5 seconds has had trouble with Miami's pass rush. So either Indiana's offensive line needs to play the game of their lives to keep Mesidor and Bain out of the backfield, or Cignetti and Mendoza and company are going to have to make a serious adjustment for how quickly he gets rid of the football. Because, yeah, he likes to go downfield. But when you like to go downfield, that requires time for plays to develop. Miami's going to try not to give him that sort of time. We'll explain why I absolutely think Miami is being slept on in this game. And, yeah, people have questions about the future of Miami's quarterback room because unless you pull a rabbit out of your hat, this might end up being Luke Nickel versus Emory Williams versus Judd Anderson versus Darion Coleman for the starting job. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will have another new episode coming out today. We'll talk more about the national championship game. Also, we'll talk some ACC basketball. Jay Lucas is turning heads. Miami is one of the hottest teams in the country. They blew out Notre Dame last night. Now, I'm sure Notre Dame will say it was really early in the season, it doesn't count, or that was a quality loss for us. But Miami has won their 10th straight game, and Lucas is doing an incredible job with a completely new roster from last year for his first year as a head coach. So Miami Hoops is on a roll, and believe me, I know it's been all football all the time because of where Miami is right now, where Mario Cristobal's team is right now. But after that season is over, we'll be talking a lot more about Jay Lucas's team and what Miami Hoops is doing. And we'll talk some hoops, we'll talk some football today, later on this evening with Kenton Gibbs on Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Another thing, when I mentioned, Josh Pate going against the grain and picking Miami to win the game outright when most every other analyst is going in Indiana's direction. And another thing that Pate cited was Miami's playing this game in their home stadium. Now, Indiana fans would tell you, well, it's not going to be home field advantage because Hoosier fans travel. They're going to take over that stadium. And listen, we'll see. I mean, it might very well end up being more than half Indiana fans. They've got the largest alumni base in the country, 90,000 enrolled at Indiana right now. So you can imagine how large their alumni base is. And they've never had this kind of success in football. So this is like, it might not be once in a lifetime because Cignetti's doing such a great job. But up to this point, this is like a once in a lifetime thing. So I have no doubt Indiana's going to travel well. But the point is, Miami doesn't have to travel. I think that's something people are forgetting. Hurricanes players this week get to keep up their normal routine. You get to practice at your facilities. You get to sleep in your own bed. Even for home games, I think they go to a hotel the night before and get the team buses, but it's going to be the normal home game routine for Miami, and they're going to try to keep those distractions completely out and treat it like any other game day week all week, where Indiana's not going to be able to do that. I think the consistency is important, and hell, even if Miami is outnumbered in that stadium, there's going to be a good amount of Miami fans, and it's the stadium, the environment Miami is familiar with, and it's worth noting, historically, Miami has, 3 of their 5 national championships have been won and secured at home in Miami. So the track record is there. Historically, when Miami has had an opportunity to secure a championship in their stadium, it's happened every single time, including that time in 1983 when a juggernaut Nebraska team came in, favored by double digits. I think it was 12.5 points Nebraska was favored by. Nobody gave Howard Schnellenberger's team an opportunity or a chance to win that game. And then history was made, and that became the start of a dynasty in Miami with that first of 5 national championships being won. So I think the idea to completely sleep on the fact that Miami gets to B, I know technically they're the road team, but the game is in their hometown and their home stadium. I don't think that's something that you can overlook. We get a question from Joey in Tallahassee who says, a two-part question. Assuming we don't pick up a quarterback in the portal, are we going to look at next year as a rebuilding year? If so, do you see more upside in having Emory Williams start the 1 year or allow Luke Nickel with less experience to grow as a potential multi-year starter? Here's the thing. I don't think you're going to look at it as a rebuilding year. I think Miami has too much other talent. I think the roster is too good that even if you end up starting a quarterback with less experience, after swinging and apparently missing on your top transfer portal targets, I think Miami's roster is too good and too loaded with talent to look at it as a rebuilding year. That's the answer to the first part of your question, not a rebuilding year. To answer the second part of your question, I think it's really simple. May the best man win, right? I mean, I think to this point, obviously, like Carson Beck this year is the best quarterback on Miami's roster, right? I believe Emory Williams has been the clear second best in practice, but keep in mind, Luke Nickel is younger. He's got more room to grow and develop, so maybe by the time fall camp is over, there's a chance Luke could win a competition. There's a lot of confidence in Darion Coleman after a tremendous high school career, but as a true freshman, I think he's going to need some time in the strength and conditioning program. But I think I don't think you're going to make your quarterback decision based on upside or whatever. I think you make your decision just based on who wins out in practice. I think you do a straight up competition there. We get a question from Dat Dude 239. He says, I have two questions. Everybody's got two questions in one. He says, have you heard any word on the DB safety from Minnesota who played under Heatherman? Yeah, Coy Parrish, he committed to Oregon. You notice, like, Oregon and Texas have been doing work in the transfer portal. Like, I feel like, those have been probably the biggest two spenders have been the Ducks and the Longhorns. And Coy Parrish, he committed to Oregon this week within the last couple days. He says, do you think that Mario should run with Emory Williams at quarterback next season and use that extra NIL money to add more weapons on offense and defense to complement him? He's been in Dawson's offense for 3 going on 4 years, and he's already familiar with the plays. No matter, and again, like to what I said before, I don't care if it's Emory or Luke or Judd or Darion. I just want the best man to win. But I like the other part of your question, right? If you were just willing to allegedly spend $6.5 million on a quarterback or $5+ million on a quarterback, if now you no longer have the high-priced quarterbacks available, I am all in favor of reallocating that money. Try to spend whatever it is, $3 to $4 million to get Jordan Seaton here, the former 5-star offensive tackle from Colorado, who is future first-round NFL pick. Seaton is out there, and that's another one where Oregon and Texas are lurking. But if Miami can really get in the Jordan Seaton race, I am all for it. How about edge rusher Damon Wilson, who's still out there uncommitted, who would command a high price tag, right? If you were unable to use that money on a quarterback, I would say redistribute that money to making your lines of scrimmage even stronger, because that's going to be Miami's identity again next year, right? Miami is going to try to dominate up front, offense and defensive line. I am all in favor of, like you said, 239, of making those units stronger to build around a less experienced quarterback. This is an interesting one from the 917. Can we all point out that had we gone with Emory Williams this season, we'd probably be 11-1? Listen, man, I'm all for respecting Emory Williams, but don't disrespect Carson Beck like that. I mean, yeah, Miami lost 2 games. He didn't play well in the Louisville game, but do you really think that Carson Beck put up a worse record this year than another quarterback in the room would have? I would say, yeah, if you're going to blame Carson Beck for the Louisville loss, look at what Carson Beck did to beat Notre Dame. Look what he did to beat Ole Miss. Look what he's done playing solid football all season long. I believe the premise of your question is completely false. Gilbert asks, hey, could Dante Moore be an option for adding a quarterback in the portal? Yeah, so Dante Moore's situation is he says he's either going to go pro, which he was leaning towards doing, or come back to Oregon. Now, Oregon added Dylan Raiola, so I don't know how much that complicates Moore staying at Oregon. Maybe he follows through with going pro, but I haven't heard any Miami specific buzz for him. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Miami's reassessing their options. I know another one, and we brought this up yesterday, Hussein Longstreet from USC, completely different situation because he's got 4 years of eligibility left, was just a true freshman, will be a redshirt freshman next year, but uber talented former 5-star recruit. Just for the record, according to Kane Sport, as of yesterday morning, so I don't know if this has changed, but as of yesterday morning, Longstreet's father said that Miami has not contacted him since he was in high school. So it doesn't seem like that was one that Miami was pursuing. But again, like maybe a quarterback option would be to pull a rabbit out of your hat, right? To get in late for Longstreet, to get in late for Dante Moore. But it seems like Moore up until now has been choosing between returning to Oregon or going pro. Any injury update would be nice, says Richard. I think the injury update hasn't changed since yesterday, to my knowledge. Akeem Mesidor is going to be good to go, which is great news. Had his elbow banged up, but he's fine. O.J. Frederic is going to be good to go in the defensive secondary. Ahmad Moten Sr. is full throttle, good to go. Elijah Lofton is day-to-day, got, cracked really good on that first down catch that he had last week. And it sounds like Damari Brown at corner is day-to-day. But overall, the health update from Cristobal this week was really positive. People are also asking me, a bunch of people asked me if Miami has by any chance won an appeal on Xavier Lucas's suspension. I've been looking it up this morning. And first of all, I would not expect them to win an appeal because these appeals are always slanted against you, that unless you can absolutely prove objectively that it was clear and obvious error, and I didn't think it was targeting. Most of you didn't think it was targeting, but was it not targeting enough for a committee in the NCAA to overturn it? I doubt it. They usually give the referees some leeway to make those subjective decisions. But as of this morning, I haven't seen any concrete evidence of. So the appeal has to go from Miami to the ACC to the NCAA, and I haven't seen any updates on the NCAA receiving an appeal from the ACC or any deliberation on it. So, the odds are not in our favor. I'm hoping for a miracle, but I would not expect Xavier Lucas's first half suspension to be overturned. So as it stands right now, one of Miami's starting cornerbacks, Lucas, is going to have to sit out the first half of the national championship game, which sucks. We'll talk more about the matchup throughout the week. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Smash that like button and subscribe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.